Welcome to Class Act Coaching, a podcast for teachers and instructional coaches. This show is brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. At SREB, we believe every one of you deserves a coach. Whether you're inspiring students or guiding teachers, let our school improvement team be your coach this week. Hello, this is Ashley, and I am joined by Jason, who's going to help me find a coach this week. Hi, Jason.
Ashley, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being back. I always appreciate when you can come help. So this week, I want to go back to a topic that we've covered a few different times, but it's always one that I know all my teacher friends, and I know this is something I struggle with. Just there's always room for improve on getting students more engaged. So I thought maybe we could do another lesson on ideas on how to get our kids engaged in class. Do you have somebody for that?
Yeah, we have really two people. This, I think, will be our first time we're going to have two coaches for you. I have Sharon Moehle and Kari Meldrum, and they are excellent at student engagement. They've actually written a piece for SREB with a lot of different strategies. I think they could give you a couple or two or three that could really help get your students to talk more and engage more in the curriculum.
All right. Well, I am excited to talk to them and to learn more ways to get my students actually participating in class. So I will talk to you after I talk to them.
That's great. I hope you have a great conversation with them.
Thanks. Well, hi, Kari and Sharon. How are you?
Doing well.
Doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I am great. I'm so excited to be here. This is our first ever two-coach episode, and I'm excited to see how it goes. I know you guys work together a lot, so I know your brains are going to be meshed well. I'm very excited to see how you work together. Before we get into that, though, would you mind giving me a little introduction to who you are and how you came to SREB?
Sharon, you go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, Ashley, thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. My name is Sharon Moehle, and I live in Central Missouri at the Lake of the Ozarks. I come to SREB with about 28 years of experience in secondary mathematics education. This is the beginning of my second year in SREB, which is where I met Kari. And when we met each other, we found that we had similar experiences. We had some similar backgrounds and similar training. And I'm going to toss that off to Kari so she can share that with you.
Hi. Thank you, Ashley, for having us today. I am Kari Meldrum, and I live in Lugoff, South Carolina. I live outside of northeast of Columbia, and most people, when I say you pass me on I-20 going to Myrtle Beach, and they know exactly where I am. But I've been a secondary mathematics educator for about 30 years, and have been with SREB for 2 years. And Sharon sort of talked about this a little bit, but in our almost 30 years of experience, we have had very similar work experiences and at the school district or state levels. And we both came from districts that had some really extensive SREB supports. And we actually joined SREB at the same time.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to what you are going to talk about today, which is engagement. Every teacher, it's something we've covered on episodes in the past. It's something I'm sure we'll cover again in the future because it's something that every teacher struggles with at times is how to get students engaged with the topic. And it doesn't matter. I know you guys, your background is math, but you're going to give us tips today, right? That I could use in my English class, that the social studies teacher can use in the social studies class. So it's not just math-based. So I am looking forward to learning some more ways to get my students engaged. It's something I'm always looking for. So what do you got for me?
Ashley, before we share some engagement strategies with you, I'm wondering, in a previous podcast with Keisha King, she shared with you a think, pair, share strategy. So I'm wondering, how is it going, and have you been able to implement that strategy in your classes?
I definitely use think, pair, share sometimes, and sometimes it's great. And then I try it some other times and it just doesn't work as well in certain situations. And that's something that I'd be really interested in, is if you guys have any ideas for me on the times where think, pair, share maybe isn't working. Is there something else that I could do?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask some clarifying questions first. So
When you are having students engage with the Think, Pair, Share, what's your primary goal for the students' discussion during that part of your lesson?
I want them to get whatever we're talking about. And I feel like a lot of times when they put it in their own words, instead of just hearing my words, that they're going to grasp the concepts better. I usually use it in a situation where it's maybe a little bit more complex material
Right.
than the basic stuff that I know they're going to get. And so that's how I use it.
So with the complex things or in general, so what are the challenges that you've noticed that your students are having when they're sharing ideas?
I think that it tends to do better when there's maybe enough where it's a concept that enough students already kind of get it. And then some students are struggling because then there's always the student that can kind of teach the other one that knows it already. So like when they're talking, they're both, even if one doesn't understand it, the other one's like, oh, I think this is what it means. And then they can both get it. Yeah. I think I struggle more when it's like such complex that none of the students really get it because then nobody's there to, like, they don't know enough to say, I guess.
It's
So,
difficult for them to generate those ideas, those
yes.
thoughts for them to discuss. All right. So when, or have you noticed any patterns in your students' participation? So do you have some that dominate the discussion while others stay silent? Have you noticed anything like that?
Oh, definitely. There's definitely the ones they're going to be the groups where they're talking about football or something. You know, they don't care. They're going to talk about whatever they want. And then there's the ones where one person just takes over the discussion and the other person either is fine with that because they don't want to talk or they're not fine with that, but they're not going to stand up for themselves. So it definitely it depends on the groups. And then there's going to be some groups that both people are talking to each other. You know, it just depends, I think, on the group.
Well, so I think I might have an idea for you. Think, Pair, Share could definitely be an effective tool, but sometimes if you've got hesitant or reluctant students that are sharing, or they're having a tough time generating ideas, or you have students that dominate, sometimes we might want to add an extra step in there. And it's Think, Pair, Share. So it can be a little more effective than the traditional Think, Pair, Share with that structured writing phase in there before the discussions. This can be especially beneficial for students because it encourages them to really think deeper individually before they're sharing out those ideas. It provides the quieter students a structured way to organize their thoughts. It can help also to reduce anxiety about them sharing. And what I really like about this is that it holds all students accountable for engagement since they must put their ideas in writing before discussing. But this also gives you an opportunity to assess student thinking. You can review their written responses. Sometimes in the moment, we may forget who has shared what and really being able to assess their understanding. And let's face it, when you have something written down, when students come prepared to the conversation, it fosters better conversations because they have specific ideas rather than reacting maybe impulsive. What do you think about something like that?
That makes really good sense with what I said. But I see the problem on the issues that they're just not getting at all. I think, obviously, I'm not in their head. This is just a guess. But when they do the think part, if it's something they're like, oh, I don't understand what this is, and then they just shut their brain down, I'll like wait for my partner to tell me what it means, and they don't really think of it. But the ink part would force them to actually think about it, and then they might realize, oh, I do get that a little bit, or maybe it means this or whatever. And so I can see that being very useful.
So I've got some tips on how you can implement this engagement strategy. So you might start off by posing an open-ended question or prompt, just like you would normally do with a Think, Pair, Share. You know, for math, it might be a task or word problem, or even an equation, and with a question that goes with it. And with the think part, this is really important. This is a silent processing. I give students 1 to 2 minutes to think silently about their response. And a tip for those students that are really struggling to come up with some ideas, I'm okay with them looking through their notes. What have we talked about before to help them to activate that knowledge, prior knowledge, something that we've been talking about, and then encourage them to really mentally organize their thoughts before writing. So, and encourage them, don't write. This is just think time. If you need to look through your notes to mentally organize those thoughts. And then the writing phase, the ink part, I want students to write down the responses, give them about 3 to 5 minutes. And if they're really working hard, you may extend that by a minute or two, but 3 to 5 minutes is usually enough. Encourage them to use, if it's a writing prompt or something, to use some textual evidence, some reasoning in math. This may be where students are drawing a diagram, drawing what they see in the task and defining the quantities in that task. And, for ELA, you might even have to provide a sentence starter for them so that they can really think about what they're going to be writing. And then the pair discussion part with a partner. Students then are going to share their ideas with their partner, whether it's a written response or a drawing and those quantities in the problem that they are discussing. And, making sure that each partner is listening to each other and maybe prompting them to ask a clarifying question or to add on to the discussion that they're having with one another. You can have listening roles, one student speaks first and then the other listens and responds afterwards. And then the share part for the whole class discussion. You can call on pairs of students then to share key takeaways, encourage students to cite their partner's ideas. I've done that a lot because that promotes active listening. Well, my partner said this. You can do some other things. You can do this as a whip around. And I have actually seen.
Wait, what's the whip around?
Okay, that is another strategy. The thing about the thinking pair share, you can embed some other things in there, but it's just a quick and effective way to gather a variety of student responses. So it's just a way to get each pair to share a key insight from their discussion. So when we've got a whole document of engagement strategies, so you can find some more details about the whip around in that document.
I'll share that in the show notes. So anybody that's listening, you'll be able to get all the engagement strategies, even the ones we don't talk about today, including the whip around.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some other ways you could do this sharing piece from the Think Inc. pair share with your class. But I think what's really important is that after you've done this, the tips. Now with tips, short for Think Inc. pair share, I think it's really important at the end is that you do a closure and reflection at the end. Ask students maybe to revise their written response based on the discussions. You can even have them do a quick write reflection at the end. But that may help you increase the level of engagement from the students and then provide an opportunity for them to generate some ideas.
All right. Well, I love that. I'll definitely try adding in the ink part. I can definitely see it really improving Think Pair Share. Even in the ones that already work for Think Pair Share, I can see it being just an additional step that makes it even better. So thank you so much for sharing that. Okay. So we got tips on using tips. Do you have any other examples of things we can use to boost the engagement in our classroom?
So I've got a question to ask you, Ashley. When you've already shared that you do sometimes have your students working together in group. Does every group member participate, or are they all held accountable to share whatever you're doing, an activity, a task in a math classroom? It could be solving problems. I'm just wondering if you have any strategies, and if you don't, I'd like to share a strategy with you, how to get every person that's in a group to be held accountable.
You sometimes give different roles for things like the taker, the speaker, the whatever, but I don't do that as much as I should. Most of the time they're in groups, in which case you definitely guessed it that no, not everybody participates. There's going to be one or two that are probably over on their phone, not listening at all. And then there's going to be one or two that are like trying to learn, but like the dominant one in the group is taking over. It's definitely not always as organized as it should be. So I would love to know what to do in those situations. So please tell me.
Okay, so one strategy that I can think of, it's called the traveling salesman. So what it sounds like, they're going to travel when a student going to travel to another group and they're going to give a pitch, or they're going to try to sell it or convince another group of students, their peers, why their response is correct or why their idea is a good idea. And this engagement strategy can be for any classroom, not just for a math classroom. I'm probably going to speak about it in a math classroom terms because that's, what I'm familiar with. So if you have your classroom set up in groups already with 3 to 4 students, I'm going to go ahead and identify my groups by letter names. So I'm going to have group A, group B, group C, etc. Okay. And I'm going to put maybe 3 to 4 students in the group. Sometimes I don't like more than 4 because then it can get messy for this particular strategy. So let's say I've given a task or some kind of a problem students need to solve. They're going to do it in their groups first. We're going to use Kari's strategy. They're all going to think about it. Everyone's got to ink and put down their ideas, because if they don't have something written down, we don't have anything to share. So there's where the ink comes in. So then we're going to either pair up, but in this case, we're going to group up, and then we're going to share our ideas and thoughts. We're going to have to be convincing in our groups, all of us coming together, what's going to be the best answer that we're going to put together, as this is our team answer, right?
Okay.
Now, here's where the accountability comes in. I'm going to squeeze in another strategy, it's called numbered heads. So it's just what it is. You're going to number the heads off. So in the group, you're 1, 2, 3. The other group, 1, 2, 3. Somebody's a 1, somebody's a 2, somebody's a 3. In every group. Or if you have 4, then 1, 2, 3, 4. So then you can randomly choose a number. If you want to go in order, that might be easier. So we're going to say whoever's a 1, you're going to stand up and you're going to physically walk over to the next group. You're going to travel to the next group. And you can organize it clockwise, counterclockwise, however you want. And that person is going to sit down and share what their home group has as a response. So this is what we had. This is how we solved it, or this was our idea. And then they have that opportunity to have a conversation with that next door neighbor group to either take away a better idea, or maybe they did it a different way, but it's still correct. Or maybe they did it, the new team did it correctly, and I'm the person sharing. We didn't do it right. And that's okay. So there's some error analysis there among peers.
Okay.
After they've had the time.
Can we, so like maybe I think that I understand what you're saying, but I want to make sure that I do.
Yeah.
Is it possible if you'll give an example of maybe a real thing that you would do so we can see what they're explaining in the group? So like,
Yes.
I'm trying to think of something that I would do. So if I had, in my class, they'll sometimes do a reverse outline of something that they're reading, where they write each paragraph. They have to sum it up in one sentence of what's like the main idea of each paragraph. So that's what I'm envisioning, but I just want to make sure that this is clear. So I'm envisioning in their groups, their original groups, they sum up each paragraph. So they have their reverse outline. So then I say, person 1, whoever's a number 1, get up and you go to the next table. And so they go to the next table, and then they're just going to talk about one of the first paragraph, let's say. What did you tell the group what your sentence is? And then they'll talk to each other about what was your sentence? This was our sentence. And they'll decide, is that what we're saying? Am I understanding this correctly?
I believe so. So they're going to share their sentence, and then the group they're sharing with might have something similar, but then again, they might have something different. So it's kind of an exchange of ideas.
Okay.
Or confirmation of we all got it right, maybe, or we are all on the same track.
Okay.
And then that person who traveled will go back to their home base, and then they'll communicate what happens. So this is what this group had. So we can add that on to what we have. Or here's another way to do it. So let's consider that.
And then just to make sure that So nobody's going to be just sitting around during this time, because even if you're not one of the traveling salespeople, a traveling salesperson's coming to your table, right? So you're
That is
always
correct.
going to have, there's not going to be downtime for some students waiting for their turn.
Well, here's what's nice about this. Every person gets the opportunity to travel and be the salesman. So let's say, and I love your idea about breaking down the paragraphs. So we just talked about and shared in paragraph 1. So now let's look at paragraph 2.
Okay.
So then for paragraph 2, we're going to take the person who's number 2. And this person's going to be the traveling salesman to a different group to share their ideas about paragraph 2 and exchange ideas, have that conversation. Go back to the home group and said, this is what these guys said, or shared their ideas or thoughts.
So they're going to
And then-
rotate 2 groups so that they're at a different table, and then they're going to do the same thing. They're going to say, this is our main idea from paragraph 2. What's yours? And they're going to talk about it. Okay.
Absolutely. And then if you have 3 paragraphs, Ashley, there's the third person who gets to travel as well. So
Okay.
that's, if you have groups of 3 peers and you have 3 paragraphs, and everybody in a group gets to travel.
Okay. And I assume in a math class, it would be, how did you solve this problem? Or it'll be the first step of, this is the first thing you do. This is the second thing you do for one problem, or something like that.
You could do that. Yeah, you could
Okay.
do that. Or if you have, maybe there's, I'm just going to make it short, 3-word problems, and I have groups of 3. Okay. So on the first word problem, they're working it together, or they've already worked it independently, inked it, shared it. So you're the one that's saying, okay, if you're number 1, you're going to get up and move.
Okay.
They're going to share number 1 only. We're done talking, sharing, exchanging ideas. Go back to your home group.
And I assume you could do this like in a history class. It could be different questions like, what was the thing that started this war is question 1. And they go to the groups and they discuss. And then what did this battle, what was the significance of this battle to the war? And so it's different. You could do like different questions like that. I'm just trying to make sure that we all have whatever subject you teach, like you can kind of how to do this. So there's a million ways I'm sure you can do it, but those are just things that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. So.
And this gives everybody the opportunity to get up and move, which creates that no opt-out policy. So the students understand at some point, I'm going to have to get up and move to another group and share what our group's thoughts were.
Right.
Everybody's held accountable to speak for the group and do a share out of whatever they've agreed to by the group.
Okay. I like that. I can see students not liking that because they're like, oh, I didn't want to share. I didn't want to participate. I didn't want to pay attention, but I'm happy they're participating.
And this avoids the person in the group, like you said, where you have one person in a group that sometimes is going to be the one that just like takes over and likes to be in control, and I'm going to do the work and I'm going to speak and it's all about me. But this gives everybody an equitable opportunity to be a share person or a spokesperson for their team.
That's good because I know I was that student. I was the one that was like, nobody's going to do it the way I do it. I do it the right way. And I just don't bother me. I'll do it all myself. You can have the grade. I don't care, but it needs to be done correctly. And that was me. Somebody needed to stop me because I'd be a little diva if they didn't do stuff like you're saying and make me allow other people to participate.
Well, it's a great way for the students to collaborate. And it's a great way for students to be cooperative with each other and other students from different teams.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming and sharing those great ideas. I loved both of them. And I'm sure that the sheet that you provided me has even more great tips like that. So for all the people listening out there, make sure you look at that sheet and get all the great ideas, not just the 2 we talked about today. The bell you just heard means we are almost out of time, but do you have some homework for me?
Well, I think we would probably like to have you try both of the tips and the traveling salesman and let us know how it goes.
Sharon says she would like you to try both. And I think it would be really good. In addition to trying these strategies, I think reflecting on your implementation of these strategies, thinking about, how did the students' participation compare to previous discussion methods? Did the writing phase help the students organize their thoughts before sharing? And were there any challenges that you faced? And did you have to make any changes during the implementation?
Kari and I will also be at the summer conference, so you could probably see some of these engagement strategies in action.
Well, that sounds great. I will definitely be at the conference. And anybody listening that's there, make sure you check out Sharon and Kari's session to get more of these tips. And also let us know if you try either or both of these activities in your class. Let us know how they go and if they helped you. Well,
Okay.
Thank you guys for being here with me today. I really appreciate these tips and I can't wait to use them. So thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. It was great to be here.
Thank you, Ashley, for having us.
All right. Have a great day. Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So, Ashley, what did you think of the conversation? What were some things that you could take away from that?
Well, one thing as an English teacher, as a composition teacher specifically, anything that has me getting them writing is always great for me. I love any tip where I can get them writing. I also, as somebody who's really into writing across the curriculum, I love hearing ideas for teachers outside of English, how they can work writing into their classrooms. So that tip was especially useful to me.
Yeah, I love that. I hope coaches heard that too. As Think, Pair, Share as a super popular strategy, it's common. It's really good for increasing student engagement, increasing student talk, increasing student ownership. But that added tips, Think, Pair, Share, that structured writing that's happening, that is a really great way to increase student engagement. That brief writing phase before the discussion ensures that the students have time to process their thoughts, make sure that as a teacher, we can walk around, hold the kids accountable, leads to richer conversations. So that structured writing piece is something as a coach, I'm going to latch onto it and add ink to the Think, Pair, Share side of it. And then the other one from the traveling salesman and numbered heads, that was purposeful. It was structured. And so often we're like, oh, go and talk to someone in a different group. It's something that's casual. And I hope that as coaches, we can promote that structured group role of the traveling salesman and the numbered heads, so that Sharon kept saying it increases accountability. Eventually all students are going to move to another group. So they really have to be responsible for their work instead of just, hey, send a spy and one person goes or things like that. This is very structured. So as a coach, I can take away that structured writing and those structured group roles. This podcast was really a lot about how we can be purposeful as teachers and not so on the fly, sort of. So I thought those were takeaways for a coach that I saw.
All right. Well, I love those as always. You guys always have such great takeaways. Thank you again. And for all you out there, we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Ashley.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Class At Coaching, brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. SREB is a nonprofit dedicated to improving education from pre-K all the way to PhD and into the workforce. Visit sreb.org for resources on instructional practices, teacher data, career pathways, and more. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook at SREB-School Improvement and on Twitter/X and Instagram, both at SREB Education. See you next week.